His above-average grades held his teachers to ransom and forced them to give him latitude for his perceived inability to pay attention. Chapter 4. The boy felt alone and vulnerable. Evan was not the only person that the lone figure from the pub had been carrying out surveillance upon with the intention of talking to. Earlier, much earlier, a young boy of 11 years old was also under scrutiny. This time, though, the onlooker was a little further away, so as to avoid any unnecessary alarm to the youngster should the boy become aware of his observer. After all, a man watching a child with good intentions on his mind could appear just as sinister as a wicked man stalking his next victim. The young boy was sitting beneath his favourite tree, thinking. He was quite bright for his age, yet one or two people had commented on the fact that he seemed to spend most of his time talking to himself rather than other lads. Living in a world of his own, without any normal friends, his stick-thin aunt had observed on numerous occasions. Fancy being friends with those two idiot brothers. You'll never amount to anything if you don't learn to talk to other people, normal people, she had promised him. Thinking and drifting off all the time, it's not natural. The boy was not paying attention to her words, even though he was looking at her standing by the open front door. He was wondering what would happen if someone opened the back door, causing one of those poltergeist-type drafts to rush through the house. He pictured his thin light arm being thrust into the morning sky by the wind and carried off to some faraway place, a land full of wayward boomerangs, all rebelling against any more monotonous return journeys. It never happened, and she continued to criticise his glazed expression, as she perceived it. He often felt as though the conversations which he had with himself were more productive than the gibberish which he had to suffer whilst in the company of other boys. One fact which he was always certain of during his solo conversations was the knowledge that they would always be free from condemnation. He'd suffered enough criticism and punishment from his angry father, criticising him for things which he had little control over. After all, it was hardly his fault if a bottle of beer had been left on the floor near the settee and the young boy had kicked it over. Might as well punch myself in the face and get over with, he sometimes thought to himself. Of course, he never punched himself in the face. That would leave marks. So he lay awake, waiting for the inevitable retribution, which never failed to arrive after the further consumption of alcohol, in the form of whiskey. Today, though, was a day free from dark memories. It was full of sunshine, blue sky, and the promise of adventure. He was sat in the shade, leaning against a tree, looking down at the plimsolls on his feet, thinking how nice it would be to have some new ones. Plimsolls, that is, not feet. No, his feet were fine, unlike the plimsolls which he wore. They were black canvas with a black rubber toe cap across the front, and had seen better days. One of the black laces had snapped some time ago, and had been replaced with a piece of string. To avoid attention being drawn to the makeshift lace, his mother had meticulously coloured it in with a felt-tip pen. He felt that some new plimsolls would have been champion the previous week as a birthday present, along with the two books she had deemed more appropriate for a young lad about to start high school after the summer holidays. Surely they can't cost that much, he said to himself, as he wriggled his toes backwards and forwards, making the toe cap, which was beginning to come away from the canvas part of the plimsoll, open and close. As it moved up and down, Willie thought it looked like a mouth, talking, perhaps saying, I'm all worn out, I'm old and tired, replace me with some younger ones, please. It was no good, though. He tried asking for some, and had been turned down each time. Whenever he brought the subject up, she would simply tell him that she could not afford any, that she had no spare money. It was all to pay the bills with. How many bills was one person expected to pay? He wondered, as he was certain she had paid the bills last month, and the month before that. Still, she must have her reasons, he told old Igneous, knowing his mother the way that he did. Although not quick to part with her money, she was always generous with praise and love. And that counts for a lot, he reminded himself. Looking down at the plimsolls, he sighed. It doesn't keep your feet dry in the rain, but it counts for a lot. He then decided to push the financial and emotional struggles of being an adult out of the way and listen to the sounds of the river and the chirping of the birds rather than the chattering of his mind. Because today was a day for an adventure in two parts. First, to do some tree climbing, and second, to do a spot of fishing in the river that ran below the farthest branches of the tree. The boy sometimes wondered why it was that the river seemed to inexplicably speed up as it reached the tree, as though fearful that the tree might reach down and scoop it up in order to quench its thirst. Hurrying and scurrying so fast that by the time it reached a bend a little further down its course, the water must have been quite out of breath. Not that the river had cause for concern, for although the tree was big, it was all far too stiff to do much in the way of bending and scooping. He loved to give life to inanimate objects, trying to work out what they would feel or think if they had thoughts. This often led to him being told off at school for daydreaming and not concentrating. His above-average grades, though, held his teachers to ransom and forced them to give him latitude for his perceived inability to pay attention. He was the only boy to have succeeded in climbing the tree from all the boys in the neighbourhood who had ever tried. His strong hands and natural strength, a gift from his father, were assets that the youngsters appeared not to possess. Being slender and light for his age gave him a further advantage. Perhaps when puberty kicked in properly, he would be gifted further characteristics which his father possessed. Not violent tendencies, though. The boy promised himself that violence would never be a part of his life ever again. Having already climbed to the very top of the tree twice that morning, he was now resting before embarking upon his fishing trip. On the ground next to him was an old green canvas bag containing his lunch. Along with refreshments was a small tin, previously filled with mince, which now contained 2 worms, a long piece of string, and his one and only fishing hook, a safety pin in reality. Although the canvas bag had seen better days, he thought of it as neither tatty nor scruffy. To be honest, the boy knew that it was only luck and a concentrated effort on the part of the bag that kept it from falling apart on windy days. It had, in the words of his grandfather, who had given it to him some years ago, character. It has been many places and has seen many things. Having now placed the bag on his lap, his thoughts began to drift to other places he imagined it may have been, wondrous places which his grandfather had described in great detail with great enthusiasm. No sooner had he begun to journey back to the bag's nostalgic past when he heard a voice call to him, "Woody! Hey, Woody!" This was the name that climbing the huge tree had earned him. "How are you, my mate? Are you busy? Me and our Scooby were wondering if you'd like to play out with us this afternoon." Woody thought what a cruel nickname Scooby-Doo was, as it derived from the fact that the person so labelled with it had asthma and was always panting like a dog after exerting himself. Scooby, having caught up with his brother, was now leaning against the tree, trying his best to catch up with his breath. "So, what are you doing this afternoon?" asked Scooby, pushing for an answer. "Fishing," replied Woody, while pointing to the ground at an old branch which he had fashioned into a makeshift fishing rod last summer. The brothers tried not to laugh at Woody's fishing plans, as the last thing they wanted to do was to alienate him today. "Fishing, eh? Sounds fun," said Scooby, before casually informing him that they were thinking about going down to Johnson's derelict mill for a look round and what have you. He paused to check that he had Woody's interest, and then tried a little reverse psychology, along with a piece of flattery, by stating that the only trouble being that neither of us had good enough climate to reach a hole in the roof. One of the corrugated roof sheets had come loose and blown down into the ground, providing an excellent free sledge throughout January until Mr. Taylor had taken it away and used it to repair his shed roof. Woody knew that he could easily climb the exterior wall to the roof because a few weeks previously he had done just that, with the intention of exploring Johnson's mill for himself. The trouble was that a rumour had been circulated, probably by concerned parents, that a crazy old tramp with a big knife lived in the mill. Having previously reached a hole in the roof using a telegraph pole and his trademark practice manoeuvres, Woody was certain that he had heard a noise from inside the abandoned mill. He had decided on a retreat to ground level, just in case the rumours about the tramp with the big knife were true. He further decided that a return visit sometime in the future, with Scooby and his afraid-of-nothing brother as reinforcements, might be a better plan than a solo attempt. Scooby was still trying to tempt Woody into going with them, as he was the one who usually found the words that were needed to talk Woody into mischief and tomfoolery. They needed to let them in by opening a door which someone had secured from the inside. Woody was not really listening to Scoobs, as he had made his mind up to go with them the instant that they had mentioned the derelict mill. The mill was a place that conjured up excitement and adventure, especially to a keen explorer like himself. Scoobs was a less harsh version of the asthmatic brother's nickname, which Woody used on occasion, as though trying to steer the other kids away from the cruelty of his nickname. Having asthma was bad enough, thought Woody, but to add to his troubles, Scoobs had been fitted with braces last year, which seemed to make it even more difficult for him to breathe on hot days. Not that it affected his ability to talk Woody into whatever he wanted, for Woody usually went along with anything which Scooby suggested. And then, quite unexpectedly, Woody looked up and asked, "What time?" Neither of the brothers had been expecting such a negotiation-free encounter, so Scooby suggested a time. 2? 2 o'clock? Yeah, that's fine. Come and find me a little further upriver where I will be fishing. We'll meet you at 2 o'clock then, by the stepping stones, confirmed Scooby's brother. They then turned and left. As they walked away, Scooby's brother Jimmy nudged him and said, "Easy." Scooby replied, "Yeah, a real pushover." Then they both laughed about the time they had once pushed Woody into the river. As the brothers walked away, Hunger came and sat down next to Woody, giving him a nudge, while suggesting that he should perhaps have something to eat to keep his strength up, just in case they encountered the crazy old tramp. "Perhaps if you share your biscuits with him, he may decide not to share his big knife with you," his mind suggested. "Perhaps not," he responded in no uncertain terms, as luxury items such as biscuits were treats which he was not prepared to share with anyone other than his mother. And so he began tucking into a sandwich. "Ah, what a great day," he thought. "Tree climbing, exploring Johnson's mill, and if I'm lucky, I may even have time to catch a fish or two." Not that he really believed he would ever catch anything with the branch and the string, but the fun was in trying. Great stuff. What a great day, he reflected, reaching into his bag for a bottle of cherryade. He drank only half the cherry pop, deciding to save the remaining half until after he had eaten his biscuits. He opened the packet of 4 and started eating them one after another, fearful he may have to share them with the brothers, should they return earlier than their agreed time. Just as he was about to push the remainder of the final biscuit into his mouth, he heard footsteps approaching in the grass. He half expected to see the brothers standing there, but they weren't. It was a stranger, and with no one else around, the boy felt alone and vulnerable.